So for me, at the point that I had my epiphany and the cards started to fall, I felt like I had just been shoved off the top of a skyscraper and I had no idea where I was going. And I cried for 3 hours straight. And I just said, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I believe, I'm so sorry. And what do? And believe me, I have been so indoctrinated, I considered the possibility that I have been brainwashed by the ex-members. So I said to myself, I'm not going to do anything public, I'm not going to do anything, I'm going to take 3 months and start reading through the Divine Principle. I'm going to read through all the literature and all the history and find former members and find out what they know and do my homework. And part of what I was really fascinated with was, what is this brainwashing thing? And I basically called Robert Lifton's office and tracked him down. I said, I'd like to have a meeting with you. He said, why? I said, because I read Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism. He said, that old book? At the time I was 15 years old. I said, yeah. He said, why? And I said, because it helped me get out of a totalistic group. And I met with him and I told him about how the Moonies recruit on the street, the 3-day workshop, the 7-day workshop, the 20-day workshop, the 40-day workshop, the 120-day workshop. He said, you know what, Steve, what you're describing is so much more sophisticated than what the Chinese communists were doing in the 50s. He said, it's like a mutant hybrid. And he said, you know what, I've only studied it secondhand by interviewing people. He said, you've lived it. It was done to you and you did it to other people. He said, you're the expert. Really? I'm not just a stupid college dropout who got conned and believed this fantasy story about the Messiah. And it began what turned out to be my life work. I didn't realize it at the time. And there's much more to my story. Jonestown. So what I'm hoping to do, and my sense in talking with everybody is that most of the people in this room were born into LDS. Is that true? As opposed to recruited? A few people were recruited? I know Ken said that he was recruited. And I've done therapy with people who've been born in the Moonies. I've done therapy with people born in Scientology, in Hare Krishnas, in the Children of God, in Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints group, and many, many other groups. So I have not had an experience of counseling someone who was born into LDS, but maybe I'll have an opportunity at some point in the near future. But it's, for me, my reaction, folks, in responding to what Richard was saying before about how it's not a cult, my response is, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And just because it's been around for a long time and has infiltrated and mainstream doesn't make what they're doing kosher, to use a Jewish term. And, you know, I'm like you, living in the 21st century, and I believe in human rights. Fundamental human rights. I have to turn this off. I really do think I'm going to use this PowerPoint. Let me actually go forward with this PowerPoint. United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Read it. And I was talking with a few ex-members the other night about how what would really be smart in terms of not only dealing with the LDS group, but the Moonies, Scientology, and myriad, thousands of other cults, would be to try to create a situation in Washington where they're not just being lobbied by all these multi-million, multi-billion-dollar groups, but actually have some accountability for groups that have tax exemption status. result, you chose to get into the Moonies. I said, I was lied to. I asked those, and I didn't say in my story, I had just broken up with my girlfriend, I was depressed, 3 attractive women were flirting with me. That's how I got recruited into the Moonies. I even said, are you part of some religious group? Oh, no, not at all. And within 2 weeks, I'm bowing to an altar with Moon's picture on it, reciting a pledge to follow, that Korea is my fatherland. So anyway, there's so much I want to talk about. I'm going to lay down some key ideas, and what my hope is we'll have time for questions and answers. I know a lot of you have expressed a desire for me to talk about how to help a loved one, a friend or a loved one, get out of a mind control group. But first, I thought I'd just start with, this is on my website, and I think almost everything that I'm going to show up here is on my website, freedomofmind.com. But extreme identity confusion. So a very important concept I want to convey to you is, as a mental health professional, there's this diagnostic manual of psychiatric disorders. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. It's called the DSM-4. There's a category called dissociative disorder NOS, not otherwise specified. And it's the only category that actually talks about brainwashing and cults. And I understand there's a lot of politicking going on. They may even take the word cult out, just leave the brainwashing. But essentially, what I believe mind control is it's a dissociative disorder, where a person is separated from their thoughts and feelings and inner essence, their inner self. And I know it may be confusing for those of you who were born in a cult who say, but I didn't have an identity prior to getting, being involved with LDS. But my experience is that people have an authentic self. Like, children are born, they are not blank slates. I have a young boy going on 6, and he has a very distinctive personality. And I've heard several ex-members talking about, well, I was rebellious, or I didn't believe it. I went along with it, but I didn't believe it. It's the splitting of from your real self to your cult identity. So it's a dual identity model. And I talk about it in my first book, which I wrote 20 years ago from that, called Mind Control, as John, and John cult member. You can apply it in any way, your LDS self versus your real self. The group self versus your real self. And it's a very useful and important tool in terms of conceptualizing what mind control is, and also in terms of doing therapy and helping people to get out. And for me, I was lucky. I was 19 when I was recruited into the Moonies, so I could recreate what I believed and who I was before. And part of my recruitment into the Moonies, they wanted me to sacrifice my Isaac, so they asked me to throw out all my poetry. So I lost 400 poems and such, but there were still a few that my family had saved and such. But there were photographs. My friends could remind me of things we did together. And I literally, when I first came out of the Moonies, I thought I had a terrible childhood and that my father, physically abused me. I actually literally had false beliefs about my childhood that had been installed from the group. And it's a very common pattern, by the way, in mind control groups, to distort your memories and such. And my sisters were like, what are you, crazy? Dad never was violent with us. And I said, yes, he was. He slapped me in the face. And she said, yeah, once. He lost his temper. But that just wasn't the reality. So, I need help. The truth is I'm not used to using PowerPoint, so this is a little different. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So one of the big issues is you come out and go, well, who am I? What do I believe? It's a major issue for all ex-members. And from what I've heard, all of you have been doing the typical thing that you do, which is read everything that the group produced and talk to former members and such. But what I would urge you all to do is start learning more about the psychology of influence.